I haven't even like fully tested it yet. So we're gonna test it at the very end. Hopefully it doesn't blow up or melt anything. All right, I've always wanted to build and design my own tool. And I see machinists do it all the time, and I always got super jealous because I don't have a machine shop, so I can't do it that way. Over the years, I've like tried to think of tools to problems that I have, and this time I was like, well, yeah, these things exist, but maybe there's a different version of something that exists that I could do. And that brings me to today's build. We're building a load tester, and you might be thinking, what is a load tester and what would it be for? And we'll just use a basic example here, and that is power source and a load. The load determines the amount of current drawn from your power source. This little light bulb on a 12-volt circuit draws about 4 amps of current. I often need different amounts of current to test splices or test different components or to stress things out and see how they fail. But Luke, aren't there already load testers out there? And yes, there's a few. I have a couple myself. The two main examples that we could use, one is called a carbon pile load tester. I have a giant one and it's rated for 1,000 amps, and it's super awesome and terrifying at the same time. The problem with it is it's not very accurate, and you can only use it in short bursts, and you can't really get it dialed in. The other type of load tester I have is that little guy down there, and it's super awesome and amazing and incredibly precise and built by real engineers that actually know what they're doing. The thing is it's not very powerful, which isn't too much different than the light bulb that I already have. So you could be thinking, okay, well, couldn't you just put a bunch of light bulbs like together and use that as a load tester? And yeah, you could, but one, that's not very fun, and two, it's not really what light bulbs are for. And so you're gonna have to mitigate a bunch of other issues with the light bulb using it for not its necessarily intended purpose. Something with light bulbs, you're working with a lot of heat. You don't have a good way to cool down the light bulb, and then they're obviously very bright. If you enclose them and entrap them, worry about things melting and catching on fire. That brings me to resistors, and that's kind of the foundation of this build and the direction that we took it in, that are meant to be loads and meant to get hot and meant to be bolted down and cooled off, and they kind of already solved all the problems that you have with the light bulb. That kind of had me thinking, isn't there just an easy way that we could hook up a bunch of resistors and figure out a different way to kind of be like, okay, well, we have one resistor and that pulls 3 amps of current. Now we have two together and now that pulls 6 amps of current, and kind of so on and so forth. And then we could kind of incrementally turn them on and turn them off. And that seems like something that should be pretty straightforward. And that's when the first version was born and put into a simulator. And I have it up here. The first version was based off of a 6-position circular switch. And each time you turn it up, it turns on more resistors or allows the path of electricity to flow through more resistors. It was a great like first shot, but as you can tell, it looks like kind of a mess. It looks more like a circuit board than a basic circuit that you would put together. That's because there's just better ways to do what I was trying to do. This version is heavily reliant and based and designed around relays. I did put together a first kind of shopping list to see, okay, is this relay version, can we build it? We could. It would just be super expensive to build, and it would be large. Okay, we're gonna have to scratch this and rethink of how to design this. So that is when the second version came along that we renamed the first version. So this is version 1, and you can see it's much cleaner, much simpler. This is it in the simulation, what you see labeled with the VCC, RST, the out, CTL, all of that stuff. That's what's known as a 555 timer. They're super common, and that's what simulates pulse width modulation. Bringing pulse width modulation into the equation with the resistors is what kind of made this a lot simpler. It's basically just turning things on, and you're changing how long you turn things on for, and we represent that in a duty cycle percentage. And you do that repeatedly, but you can do it really, really fast. And that's the cool thing about pulse width modulation. So the biggest difference with this design is that it will always draw the full amount of current that it's capable of drawing, but just in different increments. And that will change how much overall current is flowing through the circuit. So for this design, you can see on the simulator that as it's pulsing about 20 to 21 amps of current, but sometimes in just really small bursts and sometimes longer bursts. So if you have it all the way on, yes, it'll pull 21 amps of current continuously, but if you have it only on 50%, theoretically it should only pull on average 10 amps of current. So that's when things were getting excited, because it was like, wow, I can achieve similar results with way less parts. Now that looks pretty simple. It's just a couple of things on there. So let's put together a shopping list. And you can see our shopping list came back way smaller than the first shopping list. Still over budget. I had a simulated circuit, I had an idea, and I went out and bought some stuff, and then it was like, okay, let's put together a little working model, slap it together really quick, and just verify that we understand the circuit and the theory and everything that's going on here well enough to put it all together. So how does it work? Well, right now it's just a little knob, and we can turn it, and it increases our duty cycle for this load bank. This is a very small version of the load bank for testing and prototyping. We'll build the load bank today, and we're keeping an eye on thermals, but we can look at our pulse width. Right now with just 2 resistors in our load bank, it only pulses 4.3 amps. And then as we increase that, so you couldn't use it for testing digital components, load testing digital components, because it would just slam them with all that current. But for batteries and stuff, I think this will work great. So this is where things got difficult for me. We have the simulation, we have a working prototype, now we just gotta scale it up. And there are so many steps in between, and I haven't even like fully tested it yet. So we're gonna test it at the very end. Hopefully it doesn't blow up or melt anything. The big key to all of this was the block diagrams, and it was a total learning curve for me, and I was really terrible at first. This is the basic systems and the logic of how they work and how you want them to work. Sitting down and forcing myself to do the block diagrams, I can't stress this enough, really cleared up so many details in how to actually build this thing. And this is when I got introduced to a new program to me called KiCad. You can see we came up with the project component overview, and I have it broken down into 3 main sections. That was another piece of this puzzle that I hadn't put together yet. At first, all of these components were all jumbled onto one page. In hindsight, it seems very obvious. These are the sections responsible for the load, this is responsible for the power, and this is responsible for the thinking. This is great, but I can't build from, like, this isn't a complete blueprint. The first group that I broke it down into was the load module. The load module, I have a video that you can watch here. So this is supposed to draw the current from the batteries or through the wires or the splices to load them up with a lot of current. And this is a really good lesson in why we should draw things on a computer before we build them, because I didn't draw this, I just built it because I was like, it's just some resistors. That's all it is, just a bunch of resistors on a board in parallel. How hard could it be? Well, it turns out there's a lot of little bolts holding this thing together. It took forever. That's done. It built enough for testing. The next thing that I thought was going to be difficult to tackle was user interface module, where the logic and the inputs and everything lives under one house. That was something that I originally didn't have all put together under one roof. They were just a bunch of scattered switches and components all over the place. But eventually I was able to piece together what I wanted to live where and how I wanted to draw this out. And I was able to flesh out enough detail to where I felt like I had a completed blueprint to where I could actually build something. Ideally, the power module would have been designed and built first so that the power and ground distribution could be sorted out. So all of that brings us to this, and this is the RD001, fully assembled prototype, working as far as I can tell. Our load, our power, and our user interface / logic module. Our little analogy from the beginning of the video with the light bulb and the battery, this obviously represents the light bulb. But what can you do with something like this? These are cheap wire splices from the auto store. I don't have any rating. So if I want to test something like this and see how well it performs, I can put it in my circuit from my power source to my load. And then I can look at thermals and see how it does. I have a variable load, probably like 0.5 amp up to hopefully 20 to 21 amps of current that I can run through this splice here. There's only 3 things that I should be worried about. The arm switch, this is to adjust the amount of load. Display, P is my power in watts, and then D is for duty cycle. Duty cycle is like those pulses that we talked about and the duration of those pulses. There's a couple safety features that I try to build into it. First is obviously the physical safety features. All the powered circuits are fuse protected. And then our software safeties are an arm switch and having to re-zero the pot. And it's real simple, it's just one little knob. And as we turn this knob up, you can see that we're starting to place a load. You know, we have a few amps, we have some power, and this load is being stressed through this splice. What we haven't tested yet is, I don't know how fully capable it is. Okay, so this is kind of more the application that I was looking to use this tool for with a much larger power source. Disarmed, okay, on, and here we go. You can see that we're measuring about 22 amps of current. Those are very tiny pulses. We're at like 7% duty cycle. Based on the amount of current that our load bank can draw, which it looks like in theory at most is 22.3 amps, then that's the most that we'll ever be able to pull through this setup the way it is right now. So let's go ahead and kind of just crank it up to 11. So our display said 18.8, but our scope says 22. So there's some kind of mismatch going on there. And it seems like our load banks, I don't know, they're getting up there, 100, 101. They get up there quick. I'm not quite ready to see how hot they'll get. Yeah, I mean, it works. I'm pretty happy with it. I tried to look at, in hindsight, as never building a tool or a prototype. I wanted to briefly go over kind of the process, have a need, and look for good solutions. And that's where I came. I was like, I have a need, and there are solutions, but no good ones for my particular need. So then you have to have a plausible idea. I think with enough time and money, you can solve any problem, but it's whether or not you can fund it yourself. Next up is the simulation. I think there's a bunch of different circuit simulators out there. Put it together in there first before you spend $1. And then building a list of materials. And another question you have to ask is like, okay, well, is it realistic? My first version, God knows how much money it would have cost. I can't remember. Then I would go through and do the block diagram. I can't stress it enough. From there, I would build an overview diagram. I would dump in all of your parts. And then the mistake that I made that I wish I would have done is I wish I would have taken all those parts and systematically broke them down into the 3 main systems that I needed. If you're building anything custom for it, draw it first. Don't try to wing it. 2, that would have helped me see shortcomings in my BOM and everything too. There's always going to be problems. It's just trying to mitigate the problems and trying to prevent as many as you can. If you have to put a bunch of things together, the order in which you put all those things together is going to end up being really important, and it might not be a bad idea. Just try to kind of build it in your head first, or build it in the computer and then kind of build it in your head. Now you have all the information that you could need to dump into your drawings, right? You know the pins, the layouts, if you need the spacing, the dimensions, and then when you do go to build it, start with your powers and grounds, fill details in as needed. That's the prototype process overview. And then for me, the code development process, because I didn't write the code, it was done by an agent, if you will. Having a working simulation was the first thing to build like the first basic code. This was a super challenging project for me, and I'd like to do more of it. I'd ask you, the viewers, for the next video, would you want to see, I'm going to put version 2 notes in the downloads and probably in the description of all the things that I wish I could have done this time if I would have had the time and money for it, or we could just scrap it all and build something completely different. Totally up to you guys. That was the process of building my prototype. I'll catch you on the next one.